Picture this. You're 8 months pregnant, glowing, exhausted, standing in a ballroom, surrounded by 47 women at your baby shower. Pink decorations, a tower of cupcakes, your mother-in-law smiling at you from across the room. Then the doorbell rings. A stranger in a cheap suit hands you an envelope. You sign for it. You open it, and your entire world shatters. Divorce papers, filed yesterday, by your husband, while you were getting your nails done for this exact moment. But here's what he didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, while he thought you were home doing nothing, while his mother looked down on you, while everyone assumed you were just a dependent housewife with no future. You were building something extraordinary, something worth $2 billion, and tomorrow morning, the whole world would find out. This is the true story of Megan Cole, a woman who was betrayed at her most vulnerable moment, who discovered her husband's affair, his pregnant mistress, his complete plan to destroy her and take her baby. But it's also the story of the most satisfying reversal you will ever hear. Because sometimes the person who thinks they're leaving you with nothing discovers they're the one leaving with nothing. Stay with me. This story has everything: betrayal, billion-dollar deals, a birth, a reckoning, and the kind of justice that restores your faith in the universe. Lesson and value statement. Here's what this story will teach you. The people who need you to be small are not capable of loving you large. They don't want a partner. They want a mirror that reflects their own importance. If someone consistently minimizes your wins, dismisses your dreams, or makes you feel stupid for wanting more, that's not love. That's control. This story is for everyone who has ever been underestimated. Everyone who has built something in secret because the people around them couldn't handle their light. Everyone who needs a reminder that your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see it. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how to recognize the warning signs Megan missed, how to protect yourself legally and financially, and most importantly, how to find the strength to walk away from people who want to keep you small. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's being so focused on your own life that you forget to check if they're watching. The baby kicked hard against her ribs just as the doorbell rang for the third time. Megan Cole pressed her hand against her rounded belly, trying to soothe the movement from inside. 8 months pregnant, 33 weeks exactly. The pregnancy app on her phone said her daughter was the size of a pineapple. She felt more like a watermelon. Someone should get that, her mother-in-law Patricia called from across the country club's event room. She stood near the gift table, arranging packages with precise movements that somehow managed to be both helpful and condescending. Everything had to be perfect for Patricia Cole, even someone else's baby shower. The ballroom sparkled with pink and gold decorations. 47 women filled the space, their voices creating a pleasant hum of conversation and laughter. Crystal champagne flutes caught the afternoon light. A tower of cupcakes dominated one table, each topped with a tiny fondant booty. Jessica Morgan had organized everything while Megan was buried in work that nobody here knew about. "I'll get it," Jessica said, appearing at Megan's elbow. Her best friend since college looked worried. Jessica always looked worried lately, but today her concern seemed sharper somehow. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Megan shifted in her chair. Her back ached. Her ankles were swollen to twice their normal size. She wore a blush-colored maternity dress that cost more than it should have because Patricia insisted on the Westchester Country Club. And the Westchester Country Club had standards. Tyler had texted 2 hours ago. Client emergency, running late. He would try to make the last hour. Standard Tyler excuse, standard Tyler absence. She couldn't remember the last time he had been fully present for anything involving her. Jessica returned, and her face had gone the color of old milk. Megan. She whispered the name like a secret. There's a man at the door. He says he needs to speak with you. Only you. Tell him I'm busy. Obviously. He says he's a process server. The room tilted slightly, like the floor had shifted beneath her feet. Megan gripped the arms of her chair so hard her knuckles went white. What did you say? He has papers for you. Legal papers. He says you have to sign for them personally. The conversations around them continued. The clink of glasses, the trill of laughter, the murmur of women discussing nursery colors and sleep training methods. Nobody else had heard, not yet. Megan stood slowly. Her body protested every movement these days, her center of gravity so altered by pregnancy that even walking felt like an act of faith. She moved toward the entrance, aware of eyes following her progress. Patricia's eyes, especially, tracking her with an expression Megan couldn't quite read. The man at the door wore a cheap navy suit and carried a leather folder. He looked uncomfortable, like he knew exactly what kind of bomb he was about to detonate. Rebecca Ann Cole? Megan flinched at the use of her full legal name. Yes, that's me. I need you to sign here, please. He held out a clipboard with a form attached. She took it with shaking hands, signed her name in a scrawl that barely resembled her usual signature. He handed her a thick manila envelope. Have a good day, ma'am. He turned and walked away quickly, disappearing down the country club's manicured path. Probably had other lives to ruin today. Megan stood in the doorway, holding the envelope. Heavy paper, official weight. The return address was a law firm she didn't recognize. Something cold settled in her stomach, a premonition that felt almost physical. She knew what it was before she opened it. Some part of her had known for months, maybe years, had felt it in Tyler's increasing distance, his late nights, his sudden interest in working out and buying new clothes, had felt it in the way he looked at his phone instead of her face. Behind her, the party had gone quiet. 47 women pretending not to stare while doing exactly that. She opened the envelope, pulled out the documents, read the first page once, twice, 3 times, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Petition for dissolution of marriage, filed yesterday. Her husband had filed for divorce yesterday while she was getting her nails done for the shower, while she was wrapping party favors, while she was doing everything alone as usual because he was always working, the lie she had accepted because the truth was too painful to examine. Megan. Lauren's voice cut through the buzzing in her ears. Her best friend materialized beside her, took one look at her face, and went pale. What is it? What's wrong? Megan handed her the papers, watched Jessica's expression change as she read, watched the color drain from her face, watched the lawyer and her best friend take over, her eyes scanning the document with professional efficiency even as her hands trembled. That son of a... Jessica caught herself, glancing at the room full of women who had given up any pretense of not watching. We need to talk. Now, somewhere private. Someone's phone flashed, the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter. Another flash from a different direction. The moment was being captured, preserved for posterity and social media. Megan's humiliation would be documented, hashtagged, shared with sympathetic comments that would somehow make everything worse. Patricia Cole crossed the room toward them. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor with the measured pace of someone who had all the time in the world. She looked at the papers in Jessica's hands, looked at Megan's stricken face. She did not look surprised. Something in Megan's chest cracked open. You knew, Megan said quietly. The words came out steady, which surprised her. You knew he was doing this. Patricia's mouth tightened into a thin line. This is hardly the time or place for this discussion, Rebecca. He served me divorce papers at my baby shower. Megan's voice rose despite her best efforts. At your country club, in front of everyone you invited. When exactly would be the right time, Patricia? The room had gone completely silent. 47 women watching. 47 witnesses to her complete and utter humiliation. 47 people who would tell this story at dinner parties for years to come. "I think you should leave," Patricia said. Her voice was pure ice. "You're clearly overwrought. The stress can't be good for the baby. This is my shower. It's my membership, my club, my reservation, my guest list." Patricia smiled, and it was the coldest thing Megan had ever seen. "Perhaps you should have considered that before making a scene." Jessica touched Megan's arm. "Come on, let's go. We'll figure this out somewhere else." Megan looked around the room one last time. At the decorations she hadn't chosen, at the guests who were mostly Patricia's friends, at the tower of cupcakes and the pile of gifts wrapped in coordinating paper. She thought about walking out quietly, about preserving what little dignity she had left. Instead, she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, placed both hands on her belly, where her daughter kicked and kicked like she was trying to fight her way out. "Thank you all for coming," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Small miracle. I appreciate the gifts. I appreciate your time. As you may have gathered, there's been a change of plans. The shower is over." She walked toward the exit with her head held high. Jessica grabbed her purse and the car keys. Behind them, the whispers started, a wave of sound that followed them out the door. In the parking lot, Megan made it to her car before her knees gave out. She sat in the driver's seat, stared at the steering wheel, and realized she couldn't remember how to make her hands work. Everything felt far away, like she was watching herself from a great distance. "You're not driving." Jessica slid into the passenger seat and held out her hand. "Give me the keys, Meg." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Nobody would be fine. Give me the keys." Megan handed them over without further argument. She didn't have the energy to fight. Jessica started the car and pulled out of the country club parking lot. Past the manicured lawns, past the tennis courts where women in white played at athleticism, past the life Patricia Cole had wanted for her son, which apparently no longer included Megan. "Where do you want to go?" Jessica asked. Megan thought about home, the house Tyler had insisted they buy when his career started taking off. 5 bedrooms they didn't need. His name on the deed even though her savings had covered the down payment. Her furniture, her decorating, his asset now, according to New York property law. She thought about what was waiting for her there. The nursery she had painted herself because Tyler was always traveling. The crib she had assembled alone. The life she had been building for a daughter whose father had just announced he didn't want to be her father anymore. "Take me to the office," she said. "Your office?" Jessica glanced at her. "Megan, you should rest. You should eat something. You should probably see your doctor and make sure your blood pressure isn't through the roof." "The office," Megan repeated. "Please, Jess, I need to be somewhere that makes sense right now." Jessica didn't argue further. She knew Megan well enough to recognize when pushing would only make things worse. They drove in silence through the Connecticut suburbs, past houses that looked like the American dream made manifest, past lives that were probably just as complicated as Megan's, even if they didn't look it from the outside. "What meeting?" Jessica asked finally. "You said something about the office. Is there something happening that I should know about?" Megan watched the scenery pass without really seeing it. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. "There's something I haven't told you," Megan said slowly. "Something I haven't told anyone. Not Tyler, not my parents, no one." Jessica's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Okay, that sounds ominous. Do you remember 4 years ago, when I left Google? You said you wanted to do freelance consulting, spend more time at home. That's what I told everyone." Megan closed her eyes. "What I actually did was start a company, an AI company focused on predictive logistics. It's called Next Gen AI." Silence. Then Jessica laughed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. You started a company 4 years ago, and you never mentioned it. I mentioned it. You just never asked for details. Tyler never asked for details. Nobody ever asked, because nobody thought I was capable of anything important. Megan opened her eyes and looked at her best friend, her lawyer, the woman who had introduced her to Tyler at a party 6 years ago. Tomorrow morning, Megan said, I'm signing papers that will sell my company for $2.2 billion. My personal share, after taxes and payouts, will be $891 million. Jessica pulled the car to the side of the road, put it in park, turned to stare at Megan with an expression of complete and utter shock. I'm sorry, she said. I think I just hallucinated. Did you say billion? With a B? Billion with a B. And Tyler doesn't know? Tyler thinks I do freelance consulting from home for pocket money. He thinks I'm financially dependent on him. He filed for divorce, thinking he was leaving me with nothing. Jessica started laughing. Not funny laughter, the kind that comes when reality is too absurd to process normally, when the universe delivers a punchline so perfect, it defies belief. Oh my God, she said. Oh my God, Megan. This is poetry. This is actual poetry. This is my life, Megan said quietly. And right now, I need to get to the office, because in less than 24 hours, my husband is going to find out exactly what he just walked away from, and he's going to spend the rest of his life regretting it. The offices of NextGen AI occupied the top 2 floors of a converted warehouse in Stamford. Industrial windows, exposed brick, nothing like the corporate towers where Tyler spent his days chasing partnership at Morrison and Whitfield. 63 employees worked here. 63 people who knew exactly who Megan was, who respected what she had built, who never once made her feel small or incompetent or invisible. Diane Foster was waiting in the lobby when they arrived. At 58, Diane had built and sold 3 companies before most people finished graduate school. She wore her silver hair short and her confidence like armor. She had found Megan through a tech forum 4 years ago, recognized her genius before anyone else did, and had been her partner, mentor, and fiercest defender ever since. She took one look at Megan's face and said 2 words, conference room. They rode the elevator in silence. Jessica vibrated with barely contained questions, but she knew better than to ask them in a space where anyone might overhear. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Megan sank into a chair at the head of the table, pressed her palms against the cool surface, and let herself breathe for the first time since the doorbell rang. Tell me, Diane said, all of it. Tyler filed for divorce yesterday. Had me served at my baby shower today. In front of his mother, who apparently knew about it in advance. Diane's expression didn't change. She had seen everything in her decades in business. Nothing shocked her anymore. Go on. It gets worse. Megan pulled the papers from her bag and spread them across the table. He filed in a different county, claimed I abandoned the marriage, listed my income as 0. He's requesting that I assume 70% of our marital debt, including the mortgage, the credit cards, and both car payments. Jessica leaned forward, her lawyer brain fully engaged now. He's trying to establish you as financially dependent. Classic move in high-asset divorces. Make the other party look helpless so you can control the narrative. But that's not the worst part, Megan continued. There's an attachment, a psychiatric evaluation claiming I'm mentally unstable. Depression, anxiety, possible postpartum psychosis risk. It recommends that Tyler be granted temporary custody of the baby for her own safety. Diane picked up the psychiatric report, read through it with sharp eyes. Who is this doctor? Harold Whitmore? I've never heard of him. I've never seen a psychiatrist in my life. Tyler made this up, Diane. He fabricated a medical document to try to take my daughter. Jessica was already on her phone, typing rapidly. Harold Whitmore. Let me run a search. While she worked, Megan stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below her, full of people living their ordinary lives, people who had no idea that her world had just collapsed. He doesn't know about the company, she said quietly. None of them do. Tyler thinks I'm nothing. His mother thinks I'm nothing. They planned this together, thinking they were destroying someone helpless. Diane moved to stand beside her. And tomorrow morning, we close the Caldwell deal, $2.2 billion. And Tyler finds out from the news exactly what he threw away. Before Diane could respond, Jessica made a sound of triumph, found him. Harold Whitmore lost his medical license 3 years ago. Fraud. He was caught falsifying patient records for insurance purposes. Whatever this document is, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Good, Megan said. Document everything. I want a complete file on every lie they've told. There's more to find, Jessica said. I can feel it. This level of planning, the timing, the coordination with Patricia. This wasn't impulsive. They've been working on this for months. Then we need to know what else they're hiding. Megan turned from the window. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the humiliation and the fear coiling in her stomach, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Tyler had spent their entire marriage making her feel small, questioning her decisions, dismissing her ideas, changing the subject whenever she tried to share her excitement about work. She had hidden her success, not because she wanted to, but because every time she mentioned it, he found a way to make her feel stupid for trying. She was done hiding. I need to go home, she said. Tonight, before Tyler gets back. There are things on his computer. Things I've been afraid to look at. Diane nodded. Take Jessica with you. Document everything, but don't remove anything. We need to know what we're dealing with before the lawyers get involved. What about the deal? Megan asked. Caldwell's team is coming tomorrow morning at 10. The deal goes forward as planned. You've worked 4 years for this, Megan. You've sacrificed your marriage, your sleep, your sanity. Don't let Tyler Cole take this from you, too. The house was dark when they arrived. Megan stood in the foyer of the home she had decorated, furnished, maintained, and loved, and felt like a stranger. Every room held memories of the life she thought she was building. The kitchen where she cooked dinners Tyler rarely came home for. The living room where she watched movies alone while he worked late. The bedroom where they had conceived the baby he no longer wanted. Where's his office? Jessica asked softly. Second floor, end of the hall. They climbed the stairs together. The door to Tyler's home, office, was closed but not locked. He had never bothered to lock it because he never imagined Megan would violate his privacy. She was too trusting for that, too naive, too eager to believe the best in him. Not anymore. The laptop was exactly where she expected to find it, hidden behind books on the shelf like a guilty secret. She powered it on and stared at the password prompt. She tried his birthday. Wrong. Her birthday. Wrong. Their anniversary. Wrong. Then she tried something else, Vanessa followed by 4 numbers, 328. The laptop unlocked. Who's Vanessa? Jessica asked. His paralegal. Megan's voice sounded hollow in her own ears. Her birthday is March 28th. She opened his email. The personal account, not the work one. The one he thought was completely private. The emails went back 16 months. Before the pregnancy, before what Tyler had called their optimal conception window, timing a baby like a business decision. The early messages were almost innocent. Work questions. Scheduling. The kind of communication you would expect between a lawyer and his assistant. Then they shifted. Flirtatious comments. Inside jokes. Plans to meet outside the office. By 6 months ago, they were explicit. Hotel names, room numbers. Descriptions of things Megan couldn't bring herself to read completely. Megan, Jessica said, you don't have to keep looking. Yes, I do. She scrolled to the most recent messages, found a thread labeled Exit Strategy, opened it. The email was from Tyler to his divorce attorney, with Amanda copied. Once the baby comes, she'll be too overwhelmed to fight. We establish that she's mentally unstable, get temporary custody, then negotiate. She'll take whatever deal we offer just to see her kid. Bonus, no one will believe the unemployed pregnant wife over a successful attorney. But that wasn't the worst part. The final email in the thread was dated yesterday, sent while Megan was getting her nails done in preparation for the shower. Amanda's ultrasound confirmed it's a boy. Told her we'll announce after the divorce is final. Mom is already planning the nursery at her house. This is actually working out perfectly. I get a son, you get your promotion, and Megan gets whatever scraps we decide to give her. Megan read it 3 times. Each time, the words hit harder. Amanda was pregnant too, 4 months along. Tyler's mother was already planning a nursery. They weren't just leaving her, they were replacing her. The baby, the wife, the entire life. And they had been planning it while she was carrying his child, while she was dealing with morning sickness and swollen ankles, while she was painting the nursery and assembling the crib alone. She made it to the bathroom before she vomited. Jessica held her hair back, rubbed circles on her back, murmured sounds of comfort that didn't form into actual words. When the heaving stopped, Megan sat on the cold tile floor and let herself cry. Really cry, for the first time since the doorbell rang. Great racking sobs that felt like they were tearing something loose inside her chest. He was planning this for over a year, she said when she could speak again. While we were trying to get pregnant, while I was carrying his baby, he was sleeping with her and planning to leave me with nothing. Jessica sat down beside her on the bathroom floor. Not exactly dressed for it in her silk blouse and tailored pants, but she didn't seem to care. Listen to me, she said. What Tyler did is unconscionable. What Patricia did is possibly criminal. And what they're about to discover is that they picked the wrong woman to destroy. Megan wiped her face with the back of her hand. How do I fight them? They have money, lawyers, connections. Tyler's father is a retired federal judge, for God's sake. You fight them with the truth. Jessica's voice was fierce. You fight them with documentation. You fight them with $891 million and a company that proves you were never the helpless housewife they pretended you were. She took Megan's hands in hers. Tomorrow, you close the biggest deal of your life. Tomorrow, the whole world finds out who Megan Cole really is. And tomorrow, Tyler discovers that the woman he tried to destroy is the one person he should never have underestimated. Megan looked at her best friend, at the woman who had stood beside her through college and career changes, and a marriage that was apparently built on lies. What if he tries to take my baby? Then we burn him to the ground, Jessica said simply, and we use his own emails as kindling. Morning came too quickly. Megan had barely slept, lying awake in the guest room of Diane's house because she couldn't bear to spend another night in the home Tyler had poisoned. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those emails, saw his plans laid out in black and white, saw the casual cruelty of a man who had never really loved her. But exhaustion was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not today. At 6 a.m., she showered and dressed in the most expensive maternity suit she owned. Navy blue, professional. The kind of armor women in business learned to wear when they needed the world to take them seriously. Kevin Brady, her executive assistant, met her at the office with coffee and concealer. Okay, he said, taking one look at her face. We're going to fix all of this. He gestured vaguely at her entire existence. I have products that could hide a body. Sit down, Kevin. Megan's voice cracked slightly. I was served divorce papers at my baby shower yesterday. Oh, I know. Kevin didn't miss a beat, already working on her under-eye circles with practiced hands. It's all over the mom Facebook groups. Patricia Cole posted something about mental health awareness with a photo of you looking, quote-unquote, distressed. She has 4,000 comments. She what? The good news? About 3,800 of them are calling her a monster. You've gone viral, boss. Hashtag Team Megan is trending on Twitter. Megan laughed, despite everything. It came out slightly hysterical, but it was still a laugh. Of course it's trending. My humiliation is content now. Your redemption will be bigger content, Kevin said firmly. Trust me. The internet loves a comeback story, and yours is about to be legendary. At 9:30, Diane arrived with the final paperwork. She reviewed everything with Megan one last time. The acquisition terms, the payout structure, the non-compete clauses, and employment contracts for key staff. Are you ready for this? Diane asked. I've been ready for 4 years. Good. Because Marcus Caldwell doesn't suffer fools, and he definitely doesn't suffer women who doubt themselves. Walk in there like you own the room. I do own the room, Megan said. I built it. At exactly 10 a.m., Marcus Caldwell arrived. He was 71 years old and looked like a man who had spent every one of those years building things that mattered. Gray hair, sharp eyes, an expensive suit that somehow managed to be understated. He brought 6 lawyers, 4 executives, and 2 technical specialists who would ask questions designed to expose any weakness in her system. Megan met them all with a handshake and a smile that didn't waver. Mrs. Cole, Caldwell said. He glanced at her belly, at the rings still on her finger. Or should I say, Ms. Cole, Megan is fine. The next 2 hours were the most intense of her professional life. She presented her technology, explained her algorithms, defended her architectural choices against questions designed to poke holes in her logic. The technical specialists pushed hard, but she pushed back harder. This was her creation. Her baby, in a different sense than the one currently pressing against her bladder. She excused herself twice to use the bathroom, played it off with self-deprecating humor about the joys of third trimester pregnancy. The men in suits laughed politely. The one woman on Caldwell's team, a senior VP named Catherine Walsh, gave her a knowing look of solidarity. By noon, the questions had stopped. The room went quiet. Marcus Caldwell looked at his team. They nodded. Let's talk numbers, he said. The negotiation took another hour, back and forth on valuations, earn-out structures, integration timelines, employment guarantees for her staff. Through it all, Megan held her ground. She knew what her company was worth. She knew what she was worth. And for the first time in years, she didn't apologize for either. At 1:47 p.m., she signed her name on the final page. $2.2 billion. Her personal stake, $891 million after taxes. She had done it. Against every expectation, every dismissal, every time Tyler had changed the subject when she tried to talk about her work. She had built something extraordinary while everyone thought she was doing nothing. Caldwell shook her hand with genuine respect. We'll announce Monday morning, he said. Give you the weekend to prepare your staff. Coordinate with your communications team on the press strategy. Megan glanced at Diane, saw the question in her mentor's eyes. Actually, Megan said, I'd like to announce today, this afternoon, if possible. Caldwell's eyebrows rose. That's fast. Any particular reason for the rush? Megan thought about Tyler, about Patricia, about those emails laying out their plans to destroy her. My husband filed for divorce yesterday, she said. He thinks I'm unemployed. He thinks I'm financially dependent on him. He's claiming I'm mentally unstable to try to take custody of my daughter. She met Caldwell's eyes directly. I'd like him to find out otherwise from the news. The room went completely silent. Then Marcus Caldwell smiled. Not a polite business smile. A real one that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. I like you, he said. I liked you before. I like you even more now. 2 p.m. announcement. We'll make it work. The press release went out at 2:03 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Randolph Industries acquires NextGen AI for $2.2 billion. Female-founded logistics startup revolutionizes supply chain technology. The story included quotes from industry analysts, technical specifications, revenue projections, and a photo of Megan and Caldwell shaking hands, her belly visible beneath her professional suit, her face showing nothing but confidence. Kevin monitored social media from his desk, calling out updates every few minutes. TechCrunch picked it up. Bloomberg is running it. Wall Street Journal just posted. Twitter is going absolutely insane. Megan sat in her office with her feet up, doctor's orders after the stress of the past 24 hours. Her blood pressure was higher than it should be. Rest was not optional. At 3:17 p.m., her phone rang. Tyler's name on the screen. She let it ring 3 times, 4. Took a deep breath, answered. Rebecca. His voice was strange, tight. Not angry exactly, but something close to it. What the hell is this? What am I seeing? You'll have to be more specific, Tyler. I'm seeing a lot of things today. Mostly congratulations. This news story. This company. NextGen. Is this some kind of joke? Not a joke. That's my company. I founded it 4 years ago. I sold it today. The announcement is accurate. Silence on the other end. She could hear him breathing, fast, panicked. That's impossible, he finally said. You work from home. You do freelance consulting. No, Tyler. You assumed I worked from home, doing nothing important. You never asked what I actually did. You never cared enough to ask. More silence. Longer this time. You're telling me you built a company worth $2 billion, and you never said anything? I tried to tell you, Megan said. Remember 3 years ago when I wanted to talk about a new project? You said that's nice and asked me to pick up your dry cleaning. Remember 2 years ago when I mentioned investor meetings? You changed the subject to your partnership track. She paused. You made me feel stupid every time I mentioned my work, Tyler. So I stopped mentioning it. I stopped asking for your support. I stopped needing you for anything. And now here we are. She could almost hear his mind working through the implications. The divorce filing, the claims of financial dependency, the psychiatric report designed to make her look incompetent. This changes everything, he said. His voice had shifted. Softer now, pleading, we need to talk about this. Face to face? About us? About the baby? About everything? You mean the divorce you filed yesterday? The one you served me at my baby shower in front of 47 witnesses? That divorce? That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was confused. You were thinking very clearly, Tyler. The paperwork is extremely detailed. You filed in a different county to delay my response time. You claimed I abandoned the marriage when you're the one who abandoned it. You attached a fraudulent psychiatric evaluation from a doctor who lost his license 3 years ago. How did you know about that? I know everything, Tyler. Everything you did. Everything you planned. Everything you said in those emails to Amanda. The silence that followed was deafening. Our daughter will be fine, Megan continued. Better than fine. She'll have everything she needs. From me. I'm her father, biologically. But fatherhood is more than DNA. It's showing up, being present, caring about the mother of your child. You've done none of those things. Let me come over. Let me explain. There's so much you don't understand. There's nothing to explain. You wanted a divorce. You'll get one. But not on your terms. She hung up. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. The man who thought he was leaving her with nothing had just discovered she had everything. And this was only the beginning. The story spread faster than anyone anticipated. By evening, someone had connected the dots: the baby shower photos, the divorce filing, the timing of the acquisition announcement. The narrative wrote itself, and the internet devoured it hungrily. Tech CEO's husband files for divorce day before $2 billion deal, did not know she was selling company. Tyler's face appeared alongside hers in article after article. His LinkedIn profile, his law firm headshot, his smug smile that now looked less like confidence and more like the expression of a man who had massively miscalculated. The comments were brutal. He really thought he was the successful one. Imagine the ego required to file for divorce while your pregnant wife is secretly worth $1 billion. This man fumbled the bag so hard it's actually impressive. The audacity of mediocre men never ceases to amaze me. Kevin compiled the coverage into a presentation that would have been funny if it weren't so personal. His law firm released a statement, Kevin reported, at their evening meeting. Standard corporate damage control. Tyler Cole's personal matters do not reflect the values of Morrison and Whitfield. They're reviewing the situation. Translation, Diane said dryly. He's being pushed out. Good, Megan said. But that's not enough. I want to know everything. Every lie, every plan, every person involved in this. Jessica nodded. She had spent the day building a case, pulling threads, following the money. I have a preliminary report. It's worse than we thought. How much worse? Patricia Cole has been planning this for almost 3 years, since before she married Walter. Megan frowned. Walter? What does Tyler's father have to do with this? Jessica spread documents across the conference table. Walter Cole is wealthy in his own right. Retired federal judge, family money, substantial investment portfolio. When his first wife died 3 years ago, Patricia saw an opportunity. She married him for his money. She married him for access. To his money, his connections, and his son. Patricia has a brother named Stephen Moore. Different last names because they had different fathers. Stephen joined your board 8 months ago. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Stephen was Patricia's plant, Megan said slowly. He's been inside my company this whole time. Feeding her information, Jessica confirmed, including details about the Caldwell deal. Patricia knew you were about to become very wealthy. That's why the timing was so precise. File for divorce. Before the deal closes, establish Tyler as the primary earner, claim you're unstable, then fight for half of everything during the settlement. They were going to steal my company. They were going to try. Diane's voice was ice. They underestimated the speed of your announcement. By going public today instead of Monday, you changed the narrative. Now Tyler looks like a fool instead of a victim, but that's not all. Jessica pulled out another document. Amanda Ross isn't just Tyler's mistress. She's also 4 months pregnant. The room went silent. Megan felt the information land like a physical blow. She had known about the affair. She had read the emails. But hearing it confirmed, knowing there was another baby, another family Tyler had been building while she carried his child. He got her pregnant while I was pregnant, she said. Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. While I was dealing with morning sickness and painting the nursery and doing everything alone. Yes, Jessica said softly. I'm sorry, Meg. What else? There's a custody strategy in Tyler's files. The plan was to establish you as mentally unfit, get temporary custody of your baby, and place her with Amanda. Patricia would help raise her. You would get supervised visitation at best. They wanted to take my daughter and give her to his mistress. They wanted to erase you completely. Megan stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city lights spreading below, Ordinary people, living ordinary lives, while her world burned and reformed into something new. Then we don't just fight them, she said. We destroy them. Legally, financially, publicly. I want every lie exposed, every conspirator named. I want the world to see exactly what kind of people they are. That's going to be a war, Diane warned. Tyler has resources. Patricia has connections. This won't be quick or clean. Good. Megan turned to face them. I didn't build a billion-dollar company by backing down from hard fights. And I'm not going to start now. The first strike came the next morning. Megan took a risk. She called Walter Cole, Tyler's father, and asked him to meet. He agreed immediately. His voice on the phone sounded old, tired. Different from the commanding presence she remembered from family gatherings. They met at a quiet cafe in Greenwich. Neutral territory. No witnesses except Jessica, who waited in the car with her phone recording through a legal app. Walter looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. The retired federal judge, known for his sharp mind and sharper rulings, sat across from Megan with hands that trembled slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. I saw the news, he said, about your company. Everyone saw the news. I also saw the divorce filing. Tyler brought it to me 3 days ago, asked me to review it. He said you were becoming irrational, that he was worried about the baby. And you believed him? Walter's eyes met hers. I believed what my wife told me. Patricia said you had been acting erratically, that you needed help, that Tyler was trying to protect his child. Megan reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. I need to show you something, she said. This is going to be painful, and I'm sorry for that, but you deserve to know the truth. Walter opened the folder. Read the first page. The color drained from his face. Inside were the emails. The exit strategy, the references to Amanda's pregnancy, the part about Patricia planning the nursery at her house. There was more. Evidence of Stephen Moore's placement on the next-gen board, communications between Patricia and Tyler dating back 2 years, a financial analysis showing money moving from Walter's accounts into a shell company Patricia controlled. She's been stealing from you, Megan said quietly, for at least 18 months. The amounts are small enough that you wouldn't notice in your regular statements, but it adds up. Almost $200,000. Walter read in silence. His hands shook harder with each page. I knew my son was weak, he said finally. I didn't know he was cruel. I'm not asking you to choose sides, Megan said. I'm asking you to see the truth, to understand that Patricia used you to get to me, that she's been planning this for years. Walter stopped, swallowed hard. She told me you were unstable, that Tyler was scared for the baby, that he needed my support. Do you believe her now? Long pause. The coffee shop hummed with quiet activity around them. Normal people having normal conversations, while Megan waited for an answer that could change everything. No, Walter said. I don't believe her anymore. What do you need from me? Megan thought about Tyler, about Patricia, about the plan to take her daughter and erase her from her own life. I need an ally, she said. Someone inside who can help me understand their next move before they make it. You want me to spy on my own wife? I want you to decide what kind of man you are, Megan said. The kind who protects people who deserve it, or the kind who looks away while innocent people get hurt. Walter Cole stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Tell me what you need. The first week after the announcement was chaos managed by capable hands. Jessica filed motions to block Tyler's divorce claims. Diane handled press inquiries with practiced deflection. Kevin managed the social media narrative, turning Megan's story into a symbol of female empowerment that resonated far beyond the tech industry. The hashtag Team Megan had over 2 million posts. Women shared their own stories of being underestimated, of building things while partners dismissed them, of discovering strength they didn't know they had. It felt like winning. Then everything collapsed. At 4 p.m. on Tuesday, Diane called an emergency meeting. Her face on the video screen was grim in a way Megan had never seen before. "Caldwell is backing out," she said. "What?" Megan felt the floor tilt beneath her. "We signed the papers. We have a binding agreement. There's a morality clause. Someone sent his board the viral posts about you, the mentally unstable narrative, the psychiatric report. They're concerned about optics. The psychiatric report is fraudulent. We can prove that. I know, but perception moves faster than truth in business. They want to pause the acquisition until things settle down. Review the terms. Possibly renegotiate. How long?" Diane hesitated. That was never a good sign. They're talking about a 60-day hold, maybe longer if the divorce gets messy. 60 days. 2 months of limbo, 2 months of uncertainty, 2 months of Tyler's lawyers using the delay to build their case. "Tyler doesn't know about the deal," Megan said slowly. "He couldn't have done this." "No," Diane agreed, "but someone on our board did." The realization hit like ice water. Stephen Moore. Patricia's brother had been feeding information to the enemy since the day he joined. The board meeting schedules, the financial projections, the details of the Caldwell negotiation that would allow them to sabotage it at the worst possible moment. "They planned this," Megan said. "The divorce, the psychiatric report, the leak to Caldwell. It's all coordinated." "And we walked right into it," Diane said. "I'm sorry, Megan. I should have vetted Stephen more carefully. We both should have." Before they could strategize further, Jessica burst into the room. Her face was white. "Tyler's here," she said. "He's in the parking lot. He knows about the Caldwell situation somehow. How could he possibly know that? I don't know. But he's threatening to file a claim against the company. Marital property. He's saying that anything you built during the marriage is half his. He contributed nothing. He doesn't have to prove contribution. He just has to prove the timeline." New York is complicated, Megan. This could get very ugly very fast. Megan's phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Come outside. We need to talk. This is your only chance to make this go away quietly." She showed it to Jessica, who shook her head vehemently. "Don't engage. Let me handle it through legal channels." But Megan was already walking toward the elevator. She needed to see his face, needed to understand how the man she had married, the man she had loved, had become someone capable of such calculated cruelty. Tyler stood beside his car in the parking garage. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, harder. The charming smile she had fallen for was nowhere in evidence. "Rebecca," he said, "thanks for coming down." Megan stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to run if she needed to. "You said you could make this go away," she said. "I'm listening." Tyler's smile returned, but it was colder now, more predatory. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to sign over 40% of your company shares to me. In exchange, I'll withdraw the divorce filing and the custody claim. We'll announce that we've reconciled, do some press about the pressure of entrepreneurship on marriages. Everyone will love a redemption story. You want me to give you almost $400 million. I want what's fair. You built that company during our marriage. Under New York law, I'm entitled to half. I'm being generous with 40%. Megan laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. "You're being generous? You filed for divorce, claiming I was mentally unstable. You fabricated a psychiatric report. You've been sleeping with your paralegal for over a year and got her pregnant while I was carrying your child. None of that matters legally. It matters to me, Tyler. It matters to everyone who's going to read about it when this goes to trial." Tyler's expression flickered. Uncertainty quickly masked. "You don't want a trial," he said. "Think about the baby. Think about what it would be like growing up with parents who hate each other." Is that what you want for your daughter? I want my daughter to grow up knowing her mother didn't surrender to a bully. I want her to see what it looks like when a woman stands her ground even when everything is stacked against her. You can't win this fight. Watch me. She turned to walk away. Tyler's voice followed her, sharper now, more desperate. I know about Caldwell backing out. I know your deal is falling apart. By the time this divorce is settled, you won't have a company to fight over. You'll have nothing. Megan stopped, turned back slowly. Who told you about Caldwell? Does it matter? The point is, you're not as untouchable as you think. Mom was right about you. You've always overestimated yourself. Mom. Patricia. Of course. Tell your mother something for me, Megan said quietly. Tell her that I know about the money she's been siphoning from Walter's accounts. Tell her I have documentation going back 18 months. Tell her that if she doesn't back off, I will personally make sure she spends the rest of her life in prison. Tyler's face went pale. That's not. You can't. I can. I will. And Tyler, the psychiatric report was a nice touch. Using a doctor who lost his license for fraud. Very creative. But you should have checked whether I had access to medical board records before you tried that particular lie. She walked away without looking back. Her hands were shaking, but her voice had been steady. She had learned a long time ago how to hide fear behind confidence, how to fake strength until it became real. The confrontation with Tyler was the last normal thing that happened for 3 days. At 2 a.m. on Friday, Megan woke to sharp pain, contractions. Not the Braxton Hicks she had been experiencing for weeks. These were different, stronger, more rhythmic, too early. She was only 34 weeks. She tried to call Jessica, but her friend was on a flight back from depositions in California. Diane was in New York, meeting with investors. Kevin was asleep and not answering his phone. Megan drove herself to the hospital. Every contraction felt like her body was trying to turn itself inside out. The baby pressed against her ribs, against her spine, demanding attention in the most primal way possible. Dr. Sarah Mitchell met her in the emergency room. One look at her vitals, and the humor drained from the doctor's face. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated. 150/100. Signs of preeclampsia. We need to deliver tonight. No. Megan heard the panic in her own voice. I'm not ready. The deal falls apart in 72 hours if I can't fix it. I have meetings, legal filings. I can't just... Megan. Doctor. Mitchell's voice cut through her spiral. If we don't deliver now, you could have a seizure. Your daughter could die. You could die. The words hit like physical blows. She was alone, 8 months pregnant, in a hospital at 2 a.m. with no one who loved her anywhere nearby. She called the only person she could think of. Walter? Her voice cracked. I need help. He arrived in 20 minutes, didn't ask questions, didn't lecture, just sat beside her bed and held her hand through contractions that came faster and stronger with each hour. I'm here, he said simply. I'm not leaving. The labor was brutal. 14 hours of pain that made every other difficult thing in her life seem trivial by comparison. At one point, the baby's heart rate dropped dramatically. The room flooded with medical staff. Someone mentioned emergency cesarean. Megan screamed, not from pain, though there was plenty of that, from terror, from the overwhelming fear that she was about to lose the one thing that mattered more than money or revenge or vindication. At 5:33 p.m. on Friday, Emma Cole was born. 6 pounds, 1 ounce. Tiny but healthy. Pink and screaming and absolutely perfect. They placed her on Megan's chest, skin to skin. The baby stopped crying immediately, opened her eyes, and looked at her mother with an expression that seemed far too knowing for a newborn. Hello, Emma. Megan whispered. I'm your mom. Walter cut the cord at her request. His hands shook. His eyes were wet. She's beautiful, he said. She looks like you. Good. But the joy lasted only hours. 3 hours after giving birth, Megan's phone buzzed with an email notification from the Next Gen board. Due to ongoing litigation and concerns about company stability, the board has voted to remove Megan Cole as CEO, effective immediately. Stephen Moore will serve as interim CEO until the Caldwell acquisition is resolved. They had taken her company while she was in labor. The board Stephen Moore now controlled, the company she had built with 4 years of 18-hour days. The deal that was supposed to change everything, gone, all of it. In a single vote, while she was bringing her daughter into the world, Megan lay in her hospital bed. Emma slept in the bassinet beside her. The monitor beeped steadily in the background, and for the first time since the baby shower, she cried. The hospital room was quiet except for Emma's soft breathing and the steady beep of monitors. Megan stared at the ceiling. 2 a.m. She had been awake for nearly 20 hours. But sleep felt impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Stephen Moore's face, heard the clinical language of the board email, felt the weight of everything she had built crumbling around her. Her phone rang. Jessica. I just landed, Jessica said. Her voice sounded rough from exhaustion and travel. I saw the board notification. Tell me it's not real. It's real. They voted 6-3. Stephen had been building alliances for months. Can we fight it? Challenge the vote? Maybe. Probably. But it will take time. Time we don't have with Caldwell pulling back. There has to be something. Megan looked at Emma, sleeping in the bassinet. So small. So perfect. So completely unaware that her mother's world was falling apart. Jess, I just had a baby. I'm being sued by my husband. I have no income because they removed me from my own company. I have a board that's been compromised, a deal that's collapsing, and a mother-in-law who has been planning my destruction for 3 years. She paused. I don't know how to fight them all at once. Then we fight them one at a time, Jessica said. Tell me what you need right now, not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. I need to understand how deep this goes. Patricia, Stephen, Tyler, all of it. I need to see the whole picture. I'm on my way to the hospital. I'll bring everything I have. Jessica arrived an hour later with coffee, documents, and the determined expression of someone who had declared war. They spread papers across Megan's hospital bed while Emma slept and the night shift nurses came and went. The picture that emerged was worse than Megan had imagined. Patricia Cole had married Walter specifically to get access to his family's connections. Her brother Stephen had been a business failure, bouncing between companies, leaving a trail of lawsuits and questionable dealings. When he joined the Next Gen board, Patricia saw an opportunity to finally set him up with something successful. But they hadn't counted on Megan being successful herself. When Patricia realized how valuable Next Gen actually was, the plan changed. Instead of just supporting Tyler's career, they would take Megan's company entirely. The divorce, the psychiatric evaluation, the custody threat, all designed to destabilize her, to make her look incompetent, to create grounds for removing her from her own board. And it almost worked. What about Caldwell? Megan asked. Is there any way to salvage the deal? I talked to Diane, Jessica said carefully. She's been on the phone with Marcus Caldwell all day. He's sympathetic, but his board is spooked. They need reassurance that the company is stable, that the leadership drama won't follow them through the acquisition. Leadership drama. That's what they're calling it. Corporate speak for mess they don't want to touch. Megan closed her eyes. The exhaustion was overwhelming now. pressing down on her like a physical weight. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't fight them. I have nothing left." "You have Emma." Jessica's voice was gentle, but firm. "You have me. You have Diane. You have Walter, for whatever that's worth." "They took my company, Jess. The thing I built for 4 years, they just took it. Then we take it back. How? I just had a baby. I'm recovering from a medical emergency. I can barely sit up. Without my blood pressure spiking." Jessica sat on the edge of the bed, took Megan's hand in hers. "Listen to me," she said. "What they did was illegal. The board vote was compromised by a member with undisclosed conflicts of interest. The psychiatric report was fraudulent. The timing of the custody filing was designed to interfere with a business transaction. Any one of these things would be grounds for legal action. Together, they're grounds for criminal prosecution. Criminal prosecution takes years. But the threat of criminal prosecution works in days, Jessica said. "We're not going to out-lawyer them, Megan. We're going to out-strategy them. Hit them where they're weakest before they realize we're fighting back." "Where are they weakest?" Jessica smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Patricia's brother Stephen has a history of financial fraud. Small-scale stuff mostly, but enough to establish a pattern. If we can prove he acted in coordination with Patricia to manipulate NextGen's board, that's conspiracy. Wire fraud. Possibly RICO violations if we can tie it to the money she's been moving from Walter's accounts. And Tyler? Tyler used a fraudulent medical document in court filings. That's perjury. It's grounds for disbarment. His entire career ends the moment we present that evidence. What about Patricia herself?" "Patricia is the weakest link of all," Jessica said, "because she made one critical mistake." "What mistake?" "She married Walter Cole, a retired federal judge with 40 years of contacts in the legal system, a man who trusted her, who believed her when she said Megan was dangerous, a man who is currently sitting in his study, reading through every document I've sent him, preparing to destroy his own wife to protect his granddaughter. Walter knows? Walter knows everything, and he's furious." Megan looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully. So innocent, so unaware of the storms raging around her tiny life. "What do we do first?" "We let them think they've won," Jessica said. "We stay quiet for a few days. Let Stephen get comfortable in his new CEO position. Let Patricia celebrate her victory. Let Tyler believe he's about to take half of everything. And then? And then we burn it all down." 3 days passed, 3 days of silence, 3 days of letting the enemy believe they had succeeded, 3 days of Megan recovering her strength, while Jessica and Diane worked in the background. On Monday morning, Walter Cole walked into the NextGen offices unannounced. He carried documents, evidence of his $4 million anonymous investment in the company, evidence that made him the largest individual shareholder after Megan and Diane, evidence that Stephen Moore had never bothered to discover. The board meeting that followed lasted 4 hours. Walter presented the financial records showing Patricia's embezzlement from his accounts. Jessica presented evidence of Stephen's coordination with Patricia. Diane presented communication showing the timing of the board coup was specifically designed to interfere with the Caldwell acquisition. By the end of the meeting, Stephen Moore had been removed from the board and escorted from the building by security. 2 other board members who had voted with him resigned in disgrace. Megan was reinstated as CEO. But that was just the beginning. The first call Megan made after regaining her position was to Marcus Caldwell. She was still in the hospital, still recovering, still technically on medical leave. But some things couldn't wait. "Mrs. Cole," Caldwell's voice was cautious, "I heard about the board situation. Then you know the problems have been resolved. The members who were compromised have been removed. The company is stable." I also heard about the legal issues with your husband. Those are being handled too. Caldwell was quiet for a moment. Megan could imagine him in his corner office, weighing options, calculating risks. You've had quite a week, he said finally. I've had quite a year. The board members who leaked information about our deal. They were working with your mother-in-law? Yes. She's been planning this for almost 3 years. Used her brother to infiltrate my company. Used her stepson to attack my credibility. Used her connections to try to destroy everything I built. And you stopped them. I'm stopping them. The work isn't done yet. Another pause. Longer this time. Mrs. Cole, Caldwell said, I've been in business for 50 years. I've seen hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, family feuds that make yours look like a minor disagreement. But I've never seen someone fight back from a hospital bed the day after giving birth. I didn't have a choice. My daughter needs a mother who doesn't surrender. No, Caldwell agreed. She does not. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm overriding my board's recommendation. The acquisition proceeds as planned, but I have one condition. Name it. You come back as CEO, full-time once you've recovered. I'm not buying NextGen without the person who built it. Megan felt something shift in her chest. Relief, vindication, the knowledge that everything she had sacrificed was not in vain. I accept, she said. Good. Let's close this deal. The acquisition finalized on Friday. $2.2 billion. Megan's personal stake, $891 million after taxes and payouts. She signed the documents from her hospital bed with Emma sleeping in a carrier beside her. Diane was there. Jessica was there. Walter sat in the corner, watching quietly, something like pride in his weathered face. You did it, Diane said. Against everything, you actually did it. We did it, Megan corrected. I couldn't have survived this without all of you. Now comes the hard part, Jessica said. What's harder than this? Deciding what to do about Tyler and Patricia. They're facing serious charges if we push forward. Conspiracy, fraud, perjury. Patricia alone could get 10 to 15 years. Good, Megan said. Let them rot. But there's a complication, Jessica continued. Prosecuting them to the fullest extent means a very public trial. Every detail of your marriage will be examined. Every email, every argument, every private moment. Emma will grow up with all of it documented in court records. Megan looked at her daughter, so small, so innocent, already marked by a family drama she didn't ask for and couldn't escape. What are my options? You can push for full prosecution and let the courts decide their fate. Or you can offer a deal. Reduced charges, no prison time, but public admission of guilt. Complete restitution of your legal fees, and a permanent restraining order keeping them away from you and Emma. If I take the deal, they get away with it. They don't get away with anything, Walter said quietly. Everyone had forgotten he was there. Patricia will have to admit, publicly and on record, that she conspired to destroy you. That admission will follow her everywhere. No country club will have her. No charity board will accept her. The social death might be worse than prison for someone like my wife. She's not your wife anymore, Jessica noted. Number Walter's voice was heavy. She's not. The divorce was finalized yesterday. Megan studied the man who had been her father-in-law, who had believed his wife over her, who had stood by while his son planned her destruction, who had also held her hand through labor, cut the umbilical cord, sat by her bedside while she recovered, testified against his own family to protect her. Why did you do it? She asked. All of it. Why help me instead of them? Walter was quiet for a long moment. Because my first wife, Tyler's mother, would have been ashamed of me if I hadn't, he said finally. She raised our son to be better than this. I failed her by not seeing what he became. The least I can do is protect the woman he failed and the child who deserves better. What do you want me to do about Patricia? Walter met her eyes. What's right, not what's easy for me, not what's merciful to her, what's right. Megan thought about it for 3 days. 3 days of holding Emma, 3 days of imagining her daughter growing up, searching her own name on the internet, finding court documents and news articles, and the whole ugly history of her parents' war. 3 days of asking herself what kind of example she wanted to set. On Monday, she called the district attorney. I want to offer a deal, she said. Patricia and Stephen plead guilty, public admission of all charges, full restitution of my legal fees, permanent no contact order with me and my daughter. That's lenient, the DA noted, given what they did. I know, but I have a daughter now. I want her to grow up knowing that strength isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about choosing not to, even when you could. The press conference happened on Wednesday. Patricia Cole stood before cameras in a beige suit that somehow made her look smaller than Megan remembered. Her brother Stephen stood beside her, equally diminished. I orchestrated a campaign to discredit Megan Cole using fraudulent documentation and coordinated attacks on her reputation, Patricia read from a prepared statement. Her voice shook slightly. I did this out of jealousy, greed, and a desire to control my stepson's marriage. I was wrong. Megan Cole is a remarkable woman and an exceptional mother. I am deeply sorry for the harm I caused. The questions that followed were brutal. Reporters smelled blood and circled accordingly. Megan watched from home with Emma in her arms. She felt nothing resembling satisfaction. The woman who had tried to destroy her was publicly humiliated, financially ruined, socially ostracized. Her brother would never work in business again. Her stepson was facing his own consequences. But revenge, Megan was learning, tasted less sweet than she had imagined. What tasted sweet was Emma's skin against hers. The soft sounds her daughter made while sleeping. The knowledge that this tiny person would grow up safe, loved, protected, that was worth more than any victory over enemies who had already proven themselves small. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after Patricia's public confession. Tyler's leverage had evaporated overnight. The psychiatric report was officially discredited. The custody claim was dismissed. The marital property lawsuit was withdrawn when his attorneys realized the optics of continuing would be catastrophic. He requested a meeting, one final conversation before everything was finalized. Against Jessica's advice, Megan agreed. They met at a coffee shop in Greenwich, the same town where they had bought their first house together, where they had planned their future over Sunday brunches and evening walks, where she had fallen in love with a man who existed only in her imagination. Tyler looked terrible, thin, unshaven, wearing clothes that hadn't been ironed. The polished attorney, who had always cared so much about appearances, had stopped caring about anything. Thank you for meeting me, he said. You have 15 minutes, he nodded. Accepted the limitation without argument. I made mistakes, he began. You made crimes, Megan corrected. Fraud, perjury, conspiracy, those aren't mistakes. They're choices. I know. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm trying to understand it. Understand what? How I became someone capable of this. He looked down at his coffee, untouched. My therapist says I felt threatened by you, by how capable you were, by how you never actually needed me for anything. I needed you, Tyler. I needed a partner, someone who saw me, someone who cared about what I was building. You're right. And I failed completely and catastrophically. Megan studied the man across from her, tried to find something of the person she had married, the charming smile that had made her heart race, the confident manner that had seemed so attractive before she understood it was just ego dressed up as competence. She found nothing, just a hollow shell of ambition and insecurity. What do you want, Tyler? Why did you ask for this meeting? I wanted to tell you something. Something I should have said years ago. He looked up, met her eyes, directly, for the first time. I'm sorry. Not because I got caught. Not because my life is falling apart. I'm sorry because you deserved better. You deserved someone who celebrated your success instead of feeling threatened by it. You deserved a partner, not a competitor. You deserved love. And I gave you manipulation dressed up as marriage. The words hung in the air between them. If you'd said that a year ago, Megan said slowly, it might have meant something. I know it doesn't change anything now. I know you'll never forgive me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to be a father. Not the father I was planning to be. A real father. Someone who shows up, who's present, who puts his daughter's needs before his own. You want joint custody? No. Tyler shook his head. I know that's not realistic. I'm asking for supervised visitation. Regular, scheduled times when I can be part of Emma's life without being part of yours. Megan thought about the emails, the exit strategy, the plan to give her daughter to Amanda Ross. You were going to take her from me, give her to your mistress to raise. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life being ashamed of that. But people change, Megan. Not always, not easily, but sometimes. And I want to try. What about Amanda? Tyler's expression shifted. Pain flickered across his face. She left me. Took Maxwell and moved back to Florida. She realized I'd been lying to her too. Told her we were separated when we weren't. Told her you knew about the relationship. Made her believe she was saving me from an unhappy marriage instead of helping me destroy a happy one. Was it? Happy? For you? I don't know. For me? He paused. I think I was too broken to know what happiness felt like. I spent so much energy trying to be important that I forgot to be good. The silence stretched between them. Megan thought about forgiveness, about what it meant to let go of anger, to accept that people were flawed and complicated and sometimes capable of growth. She thought about Emma, growing up without knowing her father, learning about him from news articles and court documents, forming opinions based on the worst moments of his life. I'll consider supervised visitation, she said finally. Not because you deserve it, because Emma deserves to make her own judgments about who you are. Thank you. There are conditions. You complete a full psychological evaluation, not from a doctor you bribe, from someone I choose. You attend parenting classes. You demonstrate, consistently and over time, a visual time that you've actually changed. Any slip, any manipulation, any hint that you're reverting to old patterns, and the visitation ends permanently. I understand. And Tyler, this is your last chance, not your second chance. Your last one. Waste it, and you will never see your daughter again. I won't waste it. We'll see. She stood, gathered her things, walked toward the door. Megan, Tyler's voice stopped her. For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone who isn't too small to see how extraordinary you are. She didn't turn around. I already found someone who sees me clearly, she said. Myself. Turns out that's enough. The final divorce decree came through 2 weeks later. Megan Cole received sole, legal, and physical custody of Emma. Tyler received supervised visitation, 2 hours twice a week, contingent on meeting all required conditions. Child support was set at $18,000 per month. The marital property claim was dismissed. The psychiatric evaluation was expunged from all records. Tyler's name was removed from the house deed, which had technically been Megan's asset all along. His law license was suspended pending review. Morrison and Whitfield had already terminated his partnership track. Last Megan heard, he was working at a small family practice in New Jersey, handling estate planning and minor civil disputes. A long fall from the man who thought he was going to be a senior partner before 40. But she found she didn't care about Tyler's fate anymore. What she cared about was Emma's first smile, the way her daughter's eyes tracked movement across the room, the weight of a tiny body sleeping against her chest. What she cared about was the company she had rebuilt, the employees who had stayed loyal through the chaos, the technology that was already changing how supply chains operated across 3 continents. What she cared about was the future, hers and her daughter's, unwritten, full of possibility, finally, completely free. The penthouse overlooked the city from 32 floors up, floor-to-ceiling windows, 3 bedrooms, a nursery painted soft yellow, a home office, where Megan could work while Emma napped. Space to grow, space to breathe, space to be herself. She had moved in 6 months ago, after selling the house that held too many memories, started fresh, built a life that reflected who she actually was instead of who Tyler wanted her to be. The first year of motherhood was harder than anything she had ever done, harder than building a company from nothing, harder than fighting for her reputation, harder than staring down enemies who wanted to destroy her. But also more rewarding. Emma at 1 year old was a force of nature, curious about everything, stubborn about bedtime, obsessed with a stuffed elephant named Gerald. Already forming words, already expressing opinions, already showing signs of the strong will she had inherited from both parents. Megan worked 3 days a week now, Chief Innovation Officer at Caldwell Industries, a title that came with power and flexibility and the recognition she had spent years earning. The other 4 days belonged to Emma, to playground visits and reading sessions and the kind of present, focused attention Megan had never received from Tyler. She was learning, slowly, that balance was possible, that success didn't require sacrifice of everything else, that a woman could build empires and raise children and still have something left for herself. Jessica came over on Tuesday evenings. They had started a podcast together, something that had begun as a joke and grown into an actual audience. Legal red flags in relationships, 2 million downloads and counting. They talked about warning signs, about documentation, about building financial independence even within happy marriages, about the difference between partners and parasites. Letters came from women who recognized themselves in the stories, women who had been gaslit, manipulated, diminished, women who had built things in secret because the people around them couldn't handle their light. Each letter felt like proof that the worst year of her life had meaning. Diane retired properly this time, moved to Vermont with her wife, spent her days gardening and reading and occasionally texting Megan terrible memes that made no sense to anyone over 30. Kevin got promoted twice, started dating a man named Marcus who made him laugh constantly, adopted a dramatic rescue cat named Patricia, which was absolutely intentional revenge. Walter came over every Sunday for dinner. The relationship had evolved into something neither of them expected. Not father and daughter, exactly. Something more like chosen family. 2 people bonded by shared trauma and mutual respect, and the fierce love they both had for a little girl who called one of them Grandpa and the other Mama. He had started dating again, tentatively, a retired English professor named Helen who had opinions about everything and wasn't afraid to share them. The opposite of Patricia in every way. Megan approved. Tyler kept his visitation schedule, showed up consistently, completed the parenting classes, passed the psychological evaluation. Something had changed in him, or maybe he was just better at hiding his true nature. Megan couldn't tell anymore, but Emma seemed to enjoy their time together. And that was what mattered. He would never be the father Megan wished she could give her daughter, but he might become a father who was good enough. And good enough, she was learning, was sometimes the best available option. The first birthday party was small, just the people who had shown up when it mattered. Diane and her wife via video call, Jessica with wine and presents, Walter with Helen, Kevin with Marcus and the cat in a carrier because he refused to leave Patricia home alone. Emma ate cake with her hands, got frosting in her hair, laughed at balloons popping, fell asleep in Megan's arms before the candles were even blown out. That night, after everyone left, Megan sat in the nursery. City lights spread below, Emma sleeping heavy and warm against her chest. The soft sounds of breathing the only noise in the quiet room. She thought about where she had been a year ago, broken, humiliated, convinced she had lost everything. She thought about where she was now, successful, stable, surrounded by people who actually loved her. "Your father thought I was nothing," she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "His mother thought I was nothing. Half the world thought I was nothing." She paused. "But here's what I learned. People's opinions of you are just stories they tell themselves. They're not truth. They're not facts. They're noise." Emma stirred slightly, settled back into deeper sleep. "You're going to meet people who underestimate you, who dismiss you, who try to make you feel small. Let them. While they're busy being certain you'll fail, you'll be busy building something they can't even imagine." She kissed the top of her daughter's head. "And when they finally see what you've done, you won't even care, because by then, you'll already be working on the next thing." The next morning, a call came from MIT. Dr. Angela Wright from the Computer Science Department, professional voice with warmth underneath. "Mrs. Cole, we received a recommendation from Marcus Caldwell about your work. We're launching a new fellowship program for women in artificial intelligence. Fully funded, 2-year research position. We'd like you to lead it." Megan stood at the window. The city hummed with morning traffic below. Emma was with the nanny, probably making a mess of her breakfast. "I didn't apply for anything," she said. "No," Dr. Wright agreed. "But every major figure in tech we spoke to gave us the same name, yours. You built a revolutionary company while everyone around you said it couldn't be done. That story inspired a lot of people. We want you to help the next generation do the same." Megan thought about the letters. The women who had written to say her story gave them courage. The young entrepreneurs who cited her as inspiration. She thought about Emma, what kind of world her daughter would inherit, what it would mean to help shape that world. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take your time." After hanging up, Megan looked at the photo on her desk. Emma's first birthday, frosting everywhere. Pure joy on a tiny face, new chapter, new beginning. The story was just starting. 2 years after the divorce, Megan stood at a podium in Cambridge. The auditorium was packed. 500 young women in tech, data science, artificial intelligence, students and early career professionals, and entrepreneurs who were just beginning to understand what they were capable of. The Cole Fellowship had grown beyond anything she had imagined. What started as a 2-year commitment had become her mission. Mentorship programs, funding initiatives, a network of women supporting women across every field where they had been told they didn't belong. "Thank you for being here," she began. "I want to tell you a story. 2 years ago, I was served divorce papers at my baby shower. My husband filed because he thought I was nothing, that I had nothing, that I would be easy to discard. What he didn't know was that I had spent 4 years building a company in secret, a company I sold the next day for $2.2 billion. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The press called it revenge, the greatest fumble in tech history, the ultimate comeuppance for a man who underestimated his wife. But that's not what I want to talk about today." She paused, looked out at the faces watching at her, young women who reminded her of herself at their age, full of potential, surrounded by doubt. "Revenge is satisfying," in stories. In real life, it's exhausting. The energy you spend trying to prove someone wrong is energy you're not spending on building something that matters. I didn't win because I got rich. I didn't win because Tyler's life fell apart. I didn't win because his mother had to admit publicly that she tried to destroy me. I won because I stopped asking permission to be myself. The auditorium was completely silent. My whole marriage, I made myself smaller to make my husband comfortable. I hid my success because he felt threatened by it. I stopped talking about my work because he didn't want to hear about it. I became invisible so he could feel important. And here's what I learned. The people who need you to be small are not capable of loving you large. They don't want a partner. They want a mirror. Someone who reflects back their own importance without threatening it. She thought about Emma, 3 years old now, already fierce, already opinionated, already showing no signs of ever making herself small for anyone. Somewhere out there right now, someone is being told they're nothing. Someone is being made to feel small. Someone is building something extraordinary in secret because the people around them can't handle their light. If that's you, I want you to hear this. Don't announce it. Don't explain it. Don't ask for permission. Just build. Build while they dismiss you. Build while they doubt you. Build while they're too busy being certain you'll fail to notice what you're creating. And when they finally see what you've done, you'll already be working on the next thing. Because that's what people like us do. We don't look back. The applause was thunder. Megan stepped off the stage to find Jessica waiting in the wings. Her best friend, her lawyer, her co-host, the woman who had stood beside her through the worst and helped her build the best. Good speech, Jessica said. Learned from the best. They walked together toward the reception. Donors to meet, students to mentor, a future to shape. You know she's going to ask why you named the fellowship after yourself, Jessica noted. The reporter from Forbes, I didn't name it. The board did. You could have stopped them, Megan smiled. I could have. But when my daughter asks someday why there's a fellowship with our name on it, I want to have a good answer. What answer? That her mother built something that outlasted the worst thing that ever happened to her. That pain can become purpose if you're willing to do the work. That the best revenge isn't success or money or vindication. What is the best revenge? Not caring enough to want it anymore. The reception was crowded and loud and full of young women with dreams too big for the spaces they had been given. Megan moved through the room, shook hands, heard pitches, offered advice where it might help, connected people who should know each other. Somewhere in Connecticut, Tyler Cole was picking Emma up for his weekly visitation. He had kept his word, more or less, showed up consistently, stayed sober, completed the therapy the court required. He would never be the father Megan wished he could be. But he had become something adequate. And adequate, for Emma's sake, was enough. Somewhere in Vermont, Diane was tending her garden and reading mystery novels and living the peaceful retirement she had earned through decades of fighting. Somewhere in New York, Walter was taking Helen to a museum opening, having found unexpected love in the aftermath of betrayal. Somewhere in New Jersey, Patricia Cole was living in a small condo, stripped of the social standing that had once meant everything to her. Her confession followed her everywhere, the punishment she had feared more than prison. And here in Cambridge, Megan Cole was building the next thing. Not for revenge, not for validation, not even for legacy, though that was coming whether she planned it or not. She was building because building was who she was, because the woman who had hidden herself for 6 years of marriage had finally stopped hiding, because her daughter was watching. That night, after the reception ended and the auditorium emptied and the last hand was shaken, Megan sat in her hotel room and called home. The video connected to show Walter's face, Emma bouncing in the background. "Mama!" Her daughter's voice was pure joy. "Mama, I made you a picture!" The phone camera swung wildly as Walter tried to show a crayon drawing that might have been a house or a dinosaur or possibly both. "It's beautiful, baby. I'll hang it on my wall. When you come home, tomorrow, I'll be there for breakfast. Promise? Promise." After hanging up, Megan looked out at the Cambridge skyline, a city full of students who would change the world, a future she was helping to shape. She thought about the woman she had been, hiding in her own marriage, making herself invisible, accepting crumbs because she didn't believe she deserved more. That woman felt like a stranger now. The woman who existed today was something different, harder in some ways, softer in others, built from the rubble of everything that had tried to break her. Some stories end with revenge, with the villain punished and the hero triumphant and justice served in perfect measure. This story ended differently. It ended with a woman who had stopped needing her enemies to fail in order to know she had succeeded. It ended with a daughter who would grow up watching her mother take up space unapologetically. It ended with a fellowship that would help thousands of young women build things the world didn't know it needed yet. It ended with Megan Cole, finally and completely being exactly who she was. Not nothing, everything. And that, in the end, was worth more than any amount of money, more than any vindication, more than any revenge. She was free, and she was just getting started. Now, before we dive into this incredible story, I have a small request. If you've ever felt underestimated, if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, if you've ever built something while everyone doubted you, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. I read every single one. And if this video resonates with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share stories like this every week. Real people, real struggles, real triumphs. The kind of stories that remind you what you're capable of. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who's rebuilding. Someone who's been knocked down. Someone who needs to remember their own power. Now, let's begin. Closing statement. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories and valuable life lessons. We believe that behind every satisfying tale of justice and redemption, there is wisdom that can help you navigate your own challenges. Thank you for watching. And remember, the people who underestimate you are doing you a favor. They're clearing the path so you can walk it alone.